Hi, you're watching the 8th and final part of a series about the Igavania or Metroidvania genre Castlevania games. This one is about Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. Ritual of the Night released in 2019 for PC, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch, in 2020 for iOS, Android, and Amazon Luna, and in 2021 for Google Stadia. In May 2015, a website called swordorwhip.com suddenly appeared and got some coverage from game journalism. Iga, who had recently left Konami, was teasing a new project. A few days later, the Kickstarter campaign for Bloodstained Ritual of the Night went live. Inspired by Keiji Inafune's Kickstarter crowdfunded Mighty No. 9, a spiritual successor to Mega Man, Bloodstained was to be the grand return of the 2D Metroidvania-style Castlevania. The only reason it's called Ritual of the Night is to bring to mind Symphony of the Night, the most famous and highest regarded of these games. The only reason this new franchise is called Bloodstained is because stained glass was decided on as a motif for the game, because stained glass is cool. With the help of Fangamer, a company that does game merch, and Digital Development Management, a video game agency that previously helped run Mighty No. 9's Kickstarter campaign, Bloodstained took off. Still today, in 2023, Bloodstained holds the title of second most funded video game Kickstarter campaign, only behind Yu Suzuki's Shenmue 3.
Well, congratulations. You got yourself caught. Now, what's the next step of your master plan?
One of the 64,867 Bloodstained backers is me. Suffering from success, during the fundraising campaign, new stretch goals were added and reached, promising boatloads of new content and features in Bloodstained. A few of these were freebies, like a new boss or a boss rush mode, but others were more lofty. A classic mode side game, a prequel game for handheld systems, and even Wii U and PlayStation Vita ports were all goals met during the campaign. One of the original plans was that Inti Creates, the developers of the Mega Man Zero series and Mega Man 9 and 10, would develop Bloodstained, but this didn't happen. Instead, Inti Creates handled the prequel spin-off title, which became Bloodstained Curse of the Moon. Just like with Mega Man 9 and 10 in 2008 and 2010, new classic-era Mega Man games, Inti Creates got to make, essentially, a new classic Castlevania with Curse of the Moon. Curse of the Moon released in 2018 for Nintendo 3DS, Nintendo Switch, PC, PlayStation 4, PlayStation Vita, and Xbox One, beating out Ritual of the Night by a year, and in that sense being the beginning of the franchise. Curse of the Moon is fantastic. It's a short game, so fine-tuned and with just enough options that it's endlessly replayable. There are 27 routes you can take while playing the main mode, and a 28th route with a unique final stage called Nightmare Mode is like a built-in sequel, unlocked after playing through the most obvious normal mode route. Such a good game. So good that this spin-off got its own sequel, Bloodstained Curse of the Moon 2, released in 2020 for all the same platforms except 3DS and Vita. That one's weirder. A corgi drives a steampunk mech that kind of destroys the balance of the game by being the obviously most valuable character.
Hachi. A corgi.
Curse of the Moon 2 does have really fun local co-op multiplayer, though. While the first Curse of the Moon was being developed, Iga and his team at Artplay, his new development studio, toiled away at Ritual of the Night. With the communication line of the Kickstarter campaign, many backer updates were given throughout development. At E3 2016, a demo of Ritual was shown off, and backers got to play this beta build from the comfort of their own homes. The first backer demo only included the first area and boss of the game, but for E3 2018, a second backer demo was released, including the first 2 hours or so. Being so close to not just fans, but also the people who pre-ordered the game in 2015 allowed the game's marketing to be pretty out there compared to other anticipated titles. Leading up to release, one major trailer for Ritual displays internet posts of people dissing the look of the game, followed by footage of Iga exclaiming that they will make it right, and then a side-by-side montage of scenes from Ritual of the Night showing a major graphical overhaul. These things can be normal for a video game trailer if you crowdsource your game and it ends up with a budget of $5.5 million. In 2017, the Wii U port of Ritual of the Night was pronounced cancelled, and development efforts on that front would go toward a Nintendo Switch port instead. This was decided upon during the first month of the Switch's release. Later in 2018, the PlayStation Vita port was cancelled due to support for the Vita vanishing. The Nintendo Switch is, despite being a handheld system, more capable than the Wii U in the ways that are important for computer hardware specialized to run video games. Ritual of the Night was built with Unreal Engine 4, which you'd hope would help at least a little with porting the game to different platforms. Dragon Quest XI's Echoes of an Elusive Age runs well on the Switch, and was also using the power of Unreal Engine 4. Unfortunately, the Switch port of Ritual of the Night did not fare so well. On release, it was an absolute mess. Low resolution, high input delay, and long pauses for loading between rooms plagued the Switch port of Ritual at launch and really brought it down. The Switch version launched 1 week later than all other platforms, and whatever the case for that was, it still wasn't really ready at launch. The good news is that over the course of a few weeks, some of the issues, namely the input delay, were improved drastically with update patches. You can't fault the developers for not trying to make it perform the best they could. It's still the weakest way to play Ritual of the Night, but it is playable. And despite the lower texture resolution, lower screen resolution, lower frame rate, and everything else, it still receives all new updates. That's the silver lining to the Switch version of Ritual of the Night, that it hasn't been abandoned. It still is the full game. You'd have to imagine that with the popularity of the Nintendo Switch, a large portion of Ritual of the Night's sales are the Switch version, and that feels a little weird somehow, but it is what it is. Ritual of the Night reuses the popular Soul system from the Sorrow games. Absorbing the souls of enemies has been swapped out for being impaled by magical crystal shards. The 3 souls from the Sorrow games even retain their color: red for the standard Castlevania subweapon souls, blue for souls that activate with the R1 button, and yellow for passive stat-changing souls. Bloodstained augments this with 2 new soul slots: purple shards for directional attacks, which are ranged attacks much like the red shards but aimed with the right analog stick, and green shards, which are familiars. In the Sorrow games, familiars were all blue souls, but in Symphony, familiars were switched out in the relics menu, so a new shard color acts as a natural middle ground, more elegantly adding Symphony's always active familiars into the soul system. Shards are crazy in this game. Just like in Dawn of Sorrow, farming multiple of the same soul powers up the ability, up to a cap of 9, but there's a new layer to this in Ritual. One of the side quest NPCs is the alchemist Johannes, who can power up shard abilities with the right items. This type of powering up shards can also be applied multiple times, and the recipe changes to rarer items as the power level goes up. This is a level of grinding never before seen in this series, but it's only really necessary to fight the 2 optional super bosses of the game, the Alucard-like vampire and the Dracula-like vampire, who is literally Iga, producer and scenario writer of this game. Ritual also has fighting game motion input moves, now called techniques. Like spells in Symphony, these do drain MP, but unlike Symphony, they aren't globally usable. Instead, techniques are tied to specific weapons, much like the near-invisible weapon special system in Symphony. They also have a bit of the weapon mastery system from Portrait in there, as performing a weapon technique enough times will unlock it for all weapons of that type, whether it's kick shoes, short swords, or any other. Unfortunately for this robust technique system, MP is almost always better used throwing out shard attacks instead. The coolest technique is one shared by the Shoes weapon class, which you can use to reach further places than you'd think, early in the game, before you have access to double jump or flight. Just chain a few Hadokens together and you can get some glide out of it. NPC side quests return from Ecclesia, and come in all sorts of flavors, sorted by the type of quest. One woman shows you her hit list of arbitrary numbers of specific enemies that she wants dead. Another requires gifts of specific items to honor the town's dead. And one guy accepts corn seed, and if you leave and come back later, he'll give you delicious corn. There's also a clown who keeps getting lost in the demon castle, and requires a waystone item to try to get home. He gives the protagonist an increasing amount of money for the trouble. One woman just sits around and wants you to deliver her pizza and fries. More than any other game in this series, this game is almost too big, almost too full of stuff, almost overstuffed. Bloodstained having the largest castle map was a stretch goal met, and whether that's true or not, I don't really care. Its map is bigger than Symphony's castle, but not if you include the inverted castle. The map is weird in this one, with Ritual of the Night being the first game in this set to be presented in 16:9 aspect ratio. I guess it was decided that one game screen being represented by one square map tile wouldn't look natural anymore. And so, Ritual's map tiles are each 16:9 rectangles. If we calculate map size by volume of all rooms, then Ritual wins for largest map, but again, I don't think that actually matters for much. For fun, here's what Ritual's map might have looked like if it used square map tiles like all the others. This was Ritual of the Night in 2019 on release. Since then, updates have been slowly rolled out, delivering on features promised by the stretch goals. The roguelike dungeon stretch goal was replaced with a randomizer mode, which was a great idea all around. Roguelike Metroidvania games were sort of falling out of fashion at the time, and fan-made randomizer mods for all sorts of games, including several of the games already discussed in this series, were becoming increasingly popular. The wording of a roguelike dungeon tells me that it was likely intended to be similar to the Chalice dungeons from FromSoft's Bloodborne, and a randomizer mode about shuffling items around is just a better use of development resources. It suits games with Metroidvania item progressions very well. New characters were added. First, a Zangetsu mode, a traditional post-game unlockable second character for this series. But we also have Bloodless mode, a playable boss character mode who has her own Metroidvania item progression and an all-new hand-tuned difficulty scaling, since her starting point is her boss room in the middle of the castle. The newest added character is a third-party guest character, Aurora, the protagonist from the 2014 Ubisoft game Child of Light. Since 2019, 2 new areas have been added to Bloodstained. One, a single room with a boss, a tie-in with an indie game called Kingdom 2 Crowns, and the second is a small area inspired by the game Journey. A boss revenge mode was the final stretch goal incentive, which ended up being a short boss rush challenge mode featuring 4 playable demon boss characters up against the human characters. It's okay. One of the coolest new modes added is the Classic mode, a full new Classicvania genre game built into Ritual of the Night as a side mode. This game, which was developed by WayForward, the studio known for the Shantae series, is basically a full reimagining of Castlevania 1 for NES. Every third room or so in the game remakes exact level design scenarios from Castlevania 1, which is very fun if you're like me and have played through the first Castlevania 50 times. It also shows a lot of respect to Castlevania 1 for having such carefully and well-crafted levels in 1986. Classic mode has a very different feel from Inti Create's Curse of the Moon Classicvania games, which I appreciate a lot. The biggest problem with new Classicvania games is that sometimes they make me feel like I'm 500 years old. These games feel very niche now, much more so than the Metroidvania-type games, which is kind of odd since the now monolithic FromSoft games owe so much to them. Unfortunately, marketing Classicvania games like
It's like 2D Dark Souls
seems ineffective in getting younger people into them. Anyway, a sequel to Ritual of the Night's Classic mode is in development right now, so that should be fun. The next updates coming to Ritual of the Night are to be the local and online versus mode and co-op mode. What you're looking at right now is the June 2022 development roadmap. The new crossover area in the corner ended up being the Journey one. The Bloodstained journey started in 2015, and in 2023 it's still not done. Despite this, it's evident that Ritual of the Night lands squarely in the camp of video game Kickstarter successes. The developers have already delivered on the concept of Ritual, a monstrous amalgamation of all the favorite mechanics across the series, living in one cohesive game.
I love the colorful clue.
For a loud, fan-funded return to form after a long absence, Ritual of the Night had to be this way, and if nothing else, it's stronger for it. Ritual is like an all-stars pack of Igavania goodness. Ritual of the Night started with the question of sword or whip, but the Ritual of the Night that released took one of everything from the buffet. Maybe next time we'll get a game more unique, like Order of Ecclesia, more new instead of iterating on what we already know works. In 2021, Artplay announced that they were in the planning stages of a sequel to Ritual of the Night. We can only speculate on how such a small development team is faring, balancing a new project with finalizing all of the extra content for Ritual. Meanwhile, Konami is developing new Castlevania, Metal Gear, and Silent Hill games themselves, but what this probably means is that Konami is aiding and funding the studios who are developing these titles. The new Metal Gear and Silent Hill games in question have been unveiled with teaser trailers, but whatever is next for Castlevania still hasn't been publicly shown off. Iga and Artplay could be working on the new Castlevania right now. Or anybody else. Konami recently helped the indie studio Guru Guru produce Getsu Fumaden Undying Moon, a new game in what is sort of a sister franchise to Castlevania. Through a year-long contest, Konami awarded the La Mulana developers the opportunity to make a new game in the long-dormant Maze of Gallius series. Who knows what's next? Time will tell.
Years go by. Then the morning.
See? I told you I'd get you into the old man's secret hideaway. Looks like dear old dad is out to lunch.
No.